It's Inappropriate Characters.
Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss of Internet Shitlords. And as usual, we are here today with Grim Jim and Venger Satanis. Together, we're three of the most censored RPG authors and some of the most controversial. And so we're going to be talking about a variety, as usual, of RPG controversies and D&D controversies. But we're going to be talking quite a bit tonight about different types of censorship and banning as it happens. And to start us off, we've got Venger, who is going to be telling us about how apparently, tell me if I'm right about this, RPGNet has refused to publish a number of reviews of your latest Alpha Blue supplement. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And Zeitgeist, or Thilo, as I know him, is a German reviewer. He reviews everything from Pathfinder to D&D, OSR, my stuff. And yeah, I think the thought audit might have passed by without them getting their panties in a bunch, but then the thought police.
That was too much for them.
Yeah, it's too much. I bet if you're just on the RPG.net, like the main page, and it's got like the little blurb, it's like, oh, well, today we've got this OSR thing from Venger Satanis, or some intro like that, and it's like censored in brackets, police. And then you click on that, and it's like the 404, like page not found. And then you just go to the reviews itself, and it's not there. And then Thilo got a message. He told me about it. He got a message from RPG.net saying that they just consider thoughts to be a slur and therefore, I guess, not acceptable on their sites. So yeah, that's it. I mean, they banned me from RPG.net like months ago. So yeah, this is just a continuation of that harassment, I'll call it, or over censorship, or just being a goddamn pussy. I don't know. Take your pick.
Well, listen, I can tell you that I know for a fact this came up quite some time ago now. I guess it was like a year ago. Lion and Dragon was reviewed by a number of people who submitted reviews to RPGNet, and those reviews simply never showed up. They didn't tell anyone, they didn't say anything, so they just refused to post them, basically. So there's obviously, like, I'm not saying that someone else who did thought audit would get the review posted, because it's just the subject matter itself is offensive, whereas my game had nothing offensive about it, right? So, you know, nothing potentially triggering about it, so to say, apart from me being the writer. But if there had been some other subject that could be potentially offensive, maybe not that subject, RPGNet would have posted it anyways, right? So half of this is probably because of the language, but half of it is probably because of you, right? Because they just don't want to promote stuff from people that they know are their political enemies, which is what effectively you've become.
Yeah, I've got a guy who does promotion for me. And he posted one advert for one of my products on RPGNet and got his account instantly banned. So there's that. Yeah,
I want to comment.
Spam apparently, but I don't see how one post can constitute spam.
Yeah, we've got a comment here from one of our viewers who says, "Venger, I'm going to buy Alpha Blue to support you and spite RPGNet," and that's very nice. I'm sure Venger feels happy about that. But I would recommend to all of our viewers who are considering buying Alpha Blue that they actually buy the Island of Purple Haunted Putrescence instead, because that's actually a great product. And it'd still be supporting Venger, and it'd still bother RPGNet. So get that one.
Well, I have lots, and RPG Pundit hasn't panned them all, just the sleazy ones. He's reviewed you probably reviewed like 12, 15 of my things. You probably negatively reviewed maybe somewhere like half. I don't know. maybe more than half.
It's because he's a closeted sex-negative feminist. You see, that's what.
No, that's not true. Now, hang on. Listen, I have no problem with any kind of sex, right? What I have a problem with is the idea of a pair of fat neckbeards simulating a three-way with an invisible blue, alpha blue sex worker in my living room, right, or something like that. The notion that it's somehow going to be appealing for a group of nerds, right? Including, I mean, there are mixed groups. Most of my groups are actually mixed gender, but a lot of groups are going to be all male. And the mixed gender groups, that just kind of, in a way, makes it worse because it's just an invitation for the most socially retarded in our hobby to end up doing something incredibly inappropriate in front of a woman, right? And this is kind of where my objection comes in. The last thing I can, when I put in my mind the person I would last want to see naked or doing anything sexual out of people I know, the top 30 on the list are gamers, right? So like that is the problem with this product. That's what I see as the issue here, right? And I'm sure for some people it might be okay, but I mean, unless you're playing D&D with porn stars, I really do not want to see sex acts rolled out, role played in an RPG game.
If it wasn't for LARP and cosplay, I'd have been an incel. So
that's one of the reasons why Alpha Blue is cool and useful, is because we don't all have the leisure suit Larry type lifestyle. The pickup artist, rock star, movie god kind of, and we don't live in the future where there's a gigantic space station brothel where we can just go and it's like Vegas, but even sleazier on steroids. That doesn't really exist. So that's why I had to invent it.
The internet is full of people role-playing sex who've never touched a role-playing game in their life. It's a vast, untapped market.
Most of whom you would not want to see naked. Again, would not want to see naked. And the thing is, maybe the difference here between my perspective and Grimm's and Benjer's, I don't know, is that I have never actually I've had girlfriends who have become gamers because of me, but I've never actually met or even actually hooked up with a woman through role playing first, right? Like that is not the place where that's not the field where I go hunting, my friends. This is not right. This is not where I'm looking for that, right? I have got lots of other places to look for that in the context of other shit I do, right? So like, maybe I don't think of this as a game that's going to get me a girl. I think of this as a game that's going to get me a 300-pound guy making thrusting motions as he role plays the fellatio that he's receiving from some three-breasted alien hooker, and I don't want
two things. One, it may not, playing Alpha Blue may not get you laid, but you may pick up certain skills being taken out into the world can be used to increase the odds. You will, get lucky.
Yeah, tabletop games aren't for picking people up. That's what LARP is for.
Right. But there's a lot of people that don't have the skills. And this, this here and there, it goes into detail. I, being a retired pickup artist myself, I know. The second thing is that I've played it with my home group lots, variations of, like 12, 13 different people, like at different times. But if I take this out in the convention circuit, I probably role played around Alpha Blue maybe a dozen times at conventions over the last 4 or 5 years. And if you took just like an average table, the makeup would be myself and then 4 guys, 2 girls, maybe only one of the guys maybe would be anything approaching to what RPG Pundit describes as being like, morbidly obese and, neck bearded and, but it's really not even that bad. I mean, that stereotype with this kind of game, it doesn't really attract that kind of, I mean, they're not going to win any beauty contests, maybe. But they're, average to good-looking people, a mix. You get a lot more women playing Alpha Blue than you would Dungeons and Dragons. Just because women are interested in relationships and sex.
I have serious trouble believing that. I'm sorry, especially now in the era and the Critical Role era and all of that there are more women. I mean, obviously, I mean percentage-wise, right? But even there, I have a lot of trouble believing that percentage-wise that more women play Alpha Blue than women play 5th edition.
Well, the plural of anecdote isn't data, but from what I've seen, what my experience matches Venger's. If I could be uncharacteristically serious for a moment, though, I mean, sex is important. You don't necessarily have to role play out everything. If you want to create that atmosphere of decadence and sleaze, you can be descriptive without getting into the nitty gritty. You can have this stuff in the background.
Let me point out to the audience, Grimm has a game that is very similar to Alpha Blue in some ways, but radically different in others, and which makes it, in my opinion, the better game. I'm sorry to say, but it's called Imaginations. Can you let me pimp him here? I've pimped you. Let me pimp Grimm now, okay? Hang on.
No, I was gonna ask him about Machinations with the Space Princess.
That's right. Machinations of the Space Princess. Excellent game. And the thing is that they're both about basically sleazy sci-fi play, right? Except that yours is Venger's is explicit into a level that Grimm doesn't get to. And it also, both of them have like somewhat humorous elements, but Grimm Jim's is this kind of slightly more sophisticated, humor of like, not super. I'm not going to say it's super sophisticated. It's like, a step above Benny Hill, right? But it's like kind of on that sort of level where it's like, a chuckle sort of humor. And yours is the kind of humor that Venger's that, I think 14-year-old boys love. Lots of boobies and a random table to see what's in a woman's vagina and stuff. It sounds like a game that is both funny and appealing to teenage boys who have never actually seen a girl naked, right? Like that is what it keeps saying to me.
Well, there's a part of me that describes, I guess. There's a part of that description in most guys.
We all have a 14-year-old boy deep inside ourselves, and that's what Rifts is for, okay? That's what the Palladium system, the entire Palladium system is for. That's already covered.
So riffs with dick jokes is Venger's kind of thing.
Okay, but I have a serious question for Jim. Okay, so when you were either playtesting or after it was already written and you were playing your game, Machinations of the Space Princess, did you ever, or how often would you be playing and then it got, I don't know, a little more, or maybe exactly as erotic or sexual or sleazy or titillating as, did it ever get to that point which either surprised you or you're like, okay, that's kind of what I was going for in a certain way?
The kind of way what I was aiming it for was the kind of like Heavy Metal, the film, or Fact 2, or the computer game, or the magazine. So kind of not thoroughly explicit, but just that being kind of background element. I guess the other way you can look at it is the kind of gaudy, sexualized kitsch that you see in the Flash Gordon movie or the Buck Rogers TV series with Ardala, always barely wearing.
Like in Euro comics and stuff like that, yeah.
That's kind of not quite as far as Druna, but getting there. So
Barbarella, that sort of stuff.
It's more that it's an aspect of the setting. I mean, if you consider in like the Heavy Metal movies, you would see people with bare breasts and so on walking around, and there would be implied sex and so on, but it never actually really got to that point.
But does it get to that? Did it get to that point for you when you were running it?
Weirdly enough,
kind of pull back a little bit.
Weirdly enough, it hasn't gotten to that point in playing Machinations so much. I don't know why, but it hasn't. But in other games that I've run, it has. And because I mostly play with my regular group, we kind of know where the boundaries are of what's okay and when to fade to black. Like this weekend, I was playing Iron Kingdoms, and one of our players, he plays a mercenary captain who's having an affair with a spy mistress. So we do something to imply that there is a relationship there, a romantic and a sexual relationship there, without ever really being explicit. We kind of fade to black and then come in again at the aftermath or whatever. But having that sexual politics and that connection and reflecting the decadence of the upper classes in Five Fingers, which is this pirate-run city, it goes a long way towards establishing the setting, and the players respond well to it. I think it rounds out the world, gives it more verisimilitude, because sex is such a huge driver of human ambition and action, wanting to establish a legacy, all the rest of it. To leave it out of games feels weird to me.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
I have some audience comments here if people want.
Yeah.
Card Captor Lee says, unless Ric Flair is involved in your sex scene, just fade to black. And SR2 Joker says, when I played GM'd Alpha Blue, there was explicit sex acts, but normally no, I fade to black in games. Judd Goswick says, I veer more to Machinations of the Space Princess. Martin Tepley says, gore by design takes sex to an interesting dynamic. And I guess we should point out also that Grimm has also done gore, which I haven't actually looked at that book. It's never been sent to me for review. Maybe that's a good thing.
All right.
I'm not sure, but I would imagine that might be, is gore more explicit than Machinations, or does it really only play on the whole, master slave thing that the gore genre is famous for, without going to explicit sex?
You can take it as explicit as you want. I mean, the book has boobies or whatever in it. The thing is, the gore books aren't as sexually explicit as most people seem to think they are. It's much more about the dominant submissive dynamic. So you can do that without sex. In fact, most of that is not explicitly sexual, or you could take it explicitly sexual. But the sexual dynamic is what's important and what shapes the whole world. It's part of the world building. So that's the more important part of it. I'll send you a copy for review if you like.
You touch on an interesting point here, Grimm, which is, that the gore books I haven't read any of the gore books myself. I read about this phenomenon that apparently a majority of the people who have read gore books are women, right?
Yes.
And the fact is, there have been studies done on this sort of thing, and both men and women look at porn on the internet. Both men and women do, reading erotic books tends to be more a female thing than a male thing. Men want to watch porn or stuff like that. But both of them are involved in erotica. But the erotica that they like trends in very different ways, right? And so the erotica of gore, like I never read gore. My younger sister had gore novels. She didn't like science fiction, but she had gore novels hidden under her bed, right? Yeah. I liked every other type of science fiction, but I never read the gore novels. They didn't appeal to me, right? Yeah. And you're right that the gore novels have very little explicit sex in them. They're all about the fantasy of a woman being forced to submit to a man, which is one of the most common female fantasies, right? That fantasy of submission,
something like 60%, according to some studies, something like 60% of people have that as a fantasy. Right. Women have that as a fantasy, which isn't to say they actually want it in real life, but it's a really engaging fantasy.
Exactly. But here I'm coming to my point. This is why I have a little bit of trouble imagining that Alpha Blue in particular has a larger percentage of female players to male players than 5th edition D&D does, which is that when I look at Alpha Blue, all of the erotica in Alpha Blue is very clearly male-oriented erotica, right? I don't mean that it's gay erotica or something like that, which is ironically something that a lot of female readers like. If there was a lot more gay sex in Alpha Blue, then I might believe it, that there were more women playing Alpha Blue than men. But Alpha Blue's sexual elements are all about, male fantasies, right? It's about women as, like hookers and things like that. And, all your random tables, all of your descriptions, they're all oriented towards the male sex fantasy fulfillment, not the female sex fantasy fulfillment, right?
No, you're right. I'd say like 90%. No, I'd say 90% of everything in Alpha Blue is geared towards heterosexual men. But you know what? Women are part of heterosexual men fantasies and sex life, and they share that too sometimes. Quite
often, a female power fantasy is a sexual one, to be alluring and to control men through looks and so on. That's another side. That's another side to it. Venja, you clearly need to do a gay supplement. I know you said you did your last one, but maybe you could do like a Tom of Finland inspired Leather Gods of Uranus or something.
There you go. That would, and just think of it this way, Venture. It would drive the RPGNet crowd mad. They would go absolutely insane. Do it for the lols, man. Do it for all of us, okay?
While we're picking on Venture, you wanted to rub some salt into a wound, didn't you? Yeah,
well, not really. I want to congratulate Venture, because in this day and age, it's very rare for people, when we're so polarized, to recognize if they've made a mistake, right? In terms of their political affiliation, or in terms of what they thought about the political world. And Venture the other day did a blog entry where he basically admitted that he had made a mistake about Donald Trump, right? And that he recognized that, in fact, now that Donald Trump was not guilty of collusion, that all that thing. He realized what the rest of us, it just took him, 2 years more than some of us to realize that whole thing was, one big crock of crap. But he did it. And that's the important part, right? And I want to make an offer to Venture right now, which is that on the day after Trump won the election in 2016, Venture was so mad. He was just so mad. And we had an argument on G+, and he made a bet with me that next time Trump was going to lose that election and blah, 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 right, and all this. And we bet money that Trump was going to lose. I'm going to give him the opportunity for us to, drop that bet, because I think that was a bet that was made out of a heated moment of, I really should not let him do this, because I'm sure Trump is going to win and I'm going to make money from it. But considering that Venture was a big enough man to publicly come out and say he had been wrong about Donald Trump, then I'm a big enough man to say, okay, well, then in that case, I'm going to give you the chance to say now, okay, let's forget about the bet, because I think we both agree now that Trump is the way forward.
Yes. Okay. To start with, yes. Yes, we should drop the bet, because
you heard it here first.
It's looking increasingly like, Trump is going to win re-election.
Right. We'll celebrate it together, my friend.
Yes, excellent. That sounds good. But to set the stage, or to sort of give a little backstory, as most people know, probably all over the world, the media, the fake news, the media did everything they possibly could to paint Trump in the worst possible light. I agree. Sometimes he's a total jackass and, a dick, and he says a lot of, bad stuff. But the media just I was convinced. Before the election, the last 6 months leading up to it, that those people in the media and everywhere else, the political people, were onto something, and that Trump did, in fact, collude with the Russians, mixed with all the other things that they piled on and piled on and piled on. It was day after day after day. For about 2 or 3 months after the election, I was religiously watching MSNBC, because at that point I still identified as a Democrat, or as a liberal, or progressive, whatever. And each day they came out, they were like, "Oh, okay, well, he's digging himself even deeper. We have even more information on him. look at this like we have a whole new cork board on our conspiracy wall with like new threads going here and there and everywhere. I'm just like, I got sucked in. I got, I'm a very skeptical person by nature, and I don't believe things very easily. But even I, after hearing them day after day after day after day,
propaganda,
dozens of people from like different websites and YouTube and news channels, everything. I was like, this must be true, this, and so partly that was why I was like so against Trump. It wasn't until like 3-4 months ago that I was just like, you know what? I think they may be wrong. This may be all bullshit, and maybe Trump isn't the bad guy that I was led to believe that he was. And I looked at his record, wasn't that bad? By the way he was talking, like, oh, this guy's unstable, he's insane, like he's crazy. We were going to go into war.
Effective as a president by standards, by presidential standards, he's been remarkably effective.
But it was a very slow realization on my part. Like after I said, like after the election, for the first 3 months, I was watching MSNBC like a little bit every night, wondering like when he was going to be impeached, and all this was good because that's what they told us, like any day now. One
this
thing,
is a bombshell. The end is near. They kept saying that over and over again. The end is near.
After those few months, I realized, wait a minute. Every day, MSNBC keeps saying like, "Oh, we're getting closer. It's like any day now." And a little thing in my head told me like, this could all be complete bullshit, and maybe I should tune out just a little bit and not be hanging on the edge of my seat like every single night. Like, is it not like it's happening in 10 minutes, right? Like every night, like, oh, another hour, and they've got another news break that they're going to release even more information that he did it.
If I could just interject briefly to register my dissent, I still think he's shit. He's just not a Russian spy bot. But then plenty of other progressive lefties like me didn't fall for this either. Like Karl Kalinske, who's a commentator on YouTube, he didn't fall for it. I still think Trump's rubbish. So I'm not going to join in your love in there.
Oh, give us time, Grim. Give us time. I'm still promising you that sooner or later you're going to say I was right about Brexit.
It's a Trump.
We promised not to bring that up.
I know. But 2 years ago, our friend Avenger here thought he would never admit I was right about Trump, and here we go, right?
Well, give it 50 years.
We'll see. I'm always right.
No, he's right about this one thing.
Yeah, that's the only
I've been
thing
right about
ever.
a lot of one things over the years. But let me say something about MSNBC, right? Like, you guys are of enough age as I am to remember the second invasion of Iraq, right? The one that W did. And you guys must remember Baghdad Bob, right? The propaganda minister for Saddam Hussein. That they would put him on like Al Jazeera and CNN and stuff as the tanks were rolling into Iraq, and he would be saying, "No, we have almost defeated the American enemy. We have him surrounded now. The Republican Guard is attacking." And then like they were at the door to Baghdad, and he was still saying, "We're about to win. The Americans will suffer a terrible defeat," right? And all of this, right? Like MSNBC is the Baghdad Bob of the American left, right?
Didn't they call him Comical Ali? Because there was Chemical Ali, who was the general who was in charge of their chemical weapons.
In Canada, we called him Baghdad Bob, but maybe he was
Comical Ali, yeah.
Maybe that was in England. So the thing is, though, that the left keeps claiming that the American right are the conspiracy nuts, and they point to someone like Alex Jones, who is a conspiracy nut, as the example of that, as the proof that the right wing are these crazy conspiracy theorists, right? Except Alex Jones in the right is like way out in the margins. He's not Fox News. He's like a guy with a YouTube channel that now he doesn't even have a YouTube channel, right? He's like a guy with a website, right? Whereas the equivalent of Alex Jones on the left is MSNBC. They put their Alex Jones right in the center of their entire propaganda system, right?
Her name is Rachel Maddow.
But before we get bogged down too much more in politics, shall we move on? Though I do think this whole affair is a masterclass in how to construct a conspiracy theory in your games. But
it is.
Yeah. So speaking of weird conspiracies and government interventions and stuff, a whole bunch of Call of Cthulhu books were pulped or burned, weren't they?
That's right. So what I've seen is that apparently there was this small company. They did a Kickstarter for a Cthulhu themed supplement. I believe it was for Call of Cthulhu. I might be wrong. It might be for Trail of Cthulhu. One of the two. That was this like adventure campaign book, right? And they got the Kickstarter. They did really well with it. They were producing the books and whatever. And then suddenly they get an email telling them from their Chinese printer that the entire print line had been destroyed by the Chinese government, right, for having inappropriate content.
Yeah, it was set in Shanghai back before the Communist Revolution, wasn't it?
That's right. I personally, they said that the Chinese government gave no reason for it. That's what the report said. But let me say, as somebody who's a bit of a buff on Chinese history and politics, that I'm pretty sure that the reason for it has to do with the fact that the book itself, part of the adventure, was set in 1920s Shanghai. And even though it may, because some people say, well, it doesn't have any reference to the, Communist Party or Tiananmen Square or something like that, right? No, but the Chinese government is like super, super sensitive about a number of political issues. Remember, this is a government that has banned Winnie the Pooh because people on Chinese social media were posting memes of the Chinese president next to Winnie the Pooh because he's kind of Winnie the Pooh shaped, right? So like they banned Winnie the Pooh. This is a government that is very, very careful about anything that could come to the border of affecting their public image in any way. And so you publish a book that talks about China in the 1920s and includes like demon cults and things like that. And they're going to say, no, it might be West, because they won't even understand exactly what the hell is going on there. To be fair, in the West, most people would look at the book and say, what the hell is this, right? But much less in China. And they're going to say, well, there's a chance that this is anti-Chinese propaganda by the West, so we're not going to put up with this, right? And I think that's what happened. I think that if you're making an RPG book and printing it in China, that's your choice. You got to decide whether you believe China's an ethical government or not. But in terms of are your books in danger if you print in China, I think that the only time you have to worry is if your book references China in some way, in which case I would absolutely advise you to play it safe and print it anywhere but China.
Yeah, another aspect to this might be that the Chinese government is very twitchy about anything supernatural because they have mandated state atheism, which you'd think I'd be for, being a militant atheist, but I'm not. But yeah, they get really twitchy about supernatural elements, ghosts, things like that. So a lot of Western films that involve the supernatural don't get shown in China. So that may be another aspect to it.
Yeah, they have a weird kind of like two sides to that nowadays, because there was a time, of course, where the state atheism was absolute back when they were trying to be really, Marxist and what have you. And then there was a time when this got really relaxed in the 80s and early 90s, and anything went. And there was even, like state-sponsored, energy healing going on, traditional Chinese medicine being brought back and then fused with like Western New Age ideas. And like anybody could come up with any bullshit. And they could even actually get government funding for it in China in the early 90s until the Falun Gong movement happened. And they became so popular that the Chinese Communist Party got scared and then banned them. And then they cracked down on a whole bunch of groups, right? So the thing they really worry about is cults, right? Cults and sects and things like that. Yeah. Or, what we would call religious studies, new religious movements. Because historically, China has been overthrown by sects on many occasions, from the Yellow Turban Revolt back in Han Dynasty all the way to the Boxer Uprising, right? Those were all fanatical religious sects. So they get nervous about that, and yet they still do today encourage some types of spirituality, right? Some types of weird, supernatural stuff. So it's kind of become a case where you don't really know what's going to be approved or not by the Chinese government when it comes to the occult, right?
Yeah, and they've got a big problem with Islam at the moment, which they're dealing with in not the best way. It must be
No,
said.
not. But that is, of course, for other reasons than political or religious reasons. That's because of their concern that political Islam among the Uyghurs will try to encourage revolution, right? That, the same things that happened in Russia and that have happened in the Middle East will happen to them in those provinces that are majority Muslim.
I'm just quickly checking the news on that to see what's going on with it. It's for both the Gumshoe system and Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. And it looks like they're going to be doing another printing somewhere else. So backers should hopefully still get their stuff. Just it'll take longer.
I don't publish my own books. If you do publish your own books, though, and if you do like Kickstarters and do print runs, then it is something you have to kind of think about, because obviously printing in China is the cheapest option in most cases, but you kind of have to be careful about that, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, if I had a Kickstarter that did $50, $60, $70, $100, $200,000, like a lot of these role-playing game Kickstarters I see, I would totally be like, sure, somewhere like Canada or Europe or somewhere in the United States, even though it's ungodly expensive for really nice offset printing. But I made just over $10,000, which is the bare minimum. That $10,000 is where I set, the funding. That's the bare minimum. And to do what I want, I don't think I could get Chult printed anywhere else except China. And so that's, I made like an internet handshake equivalent of like, saying that, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to print,
I think you have to be careful with Canada as well. This is some years ago now, but some role-playing game books have been stopped at the Canadian border being shipped over, and the same thing's happened with some comics. So the more adult material, they have some kind of weird pornography laws when it comes to crossing borders. So you got to be a bit careful there, just in case.
Well, Chult is more tame than a lot of the stuff that I do, but yeah, no, yeah. Hopefully, I won't have a problem. Hopefully, nobody else does. I could see where it being like Shanghai in the 1920s, tentacles, supernatural Cthulhu. I could see where, that would get banned and burned. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen anywhere else. And yeah, China sucks. But yeah, if you're on a tight budget, I don't know what else you can do. I mean, print on demand is not only expensive, but the quality isn't that great. So we'll see. We'll see.
Totalitarianism sucks in general, but we have to remember that there's totalitarianism at home too, right? And recently, the only difference is that the totalitarianism in China is the state-run totalitarianism, and here it's a mob-run totalitarianism. And recently, I believe that Grimm ran into this at when a group of people tried this mass mob movement to ban his privilege check game. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I got into it with this guy who's promoting his Swordsfall campaign. I've been kind of following that for a while. It's quite a fairly interesting aesthetic Afrofuturist game thing. But then he started doing things that just really rubbed me the wrong way. Like playing up to the Polygon website, this notoriously right on and woke, trying to get them to back him, not on the basis of the art or the fantastic idea of this game world. No, on the fact that he was a sexual and racial minority. It's just distasteful. It's grifting. And then he tried to get Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to tweet about his game. It's just this kind of naked, obvious shilling that I found distasteful. So I did a video about it. And the backlash to that, people targeted my products, targeted privilege check. I'm fairly sure it's the Zweihander guy again, because he seems to have been advising this Swordsfall guy. And I'm fairly sure he's got several sock puppet accounts with variations on two-handed sword names.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, so I'm fairly sure it's him, or at least organized by him, or set off by him somehow. Get some publicity by slagging me off, pointing out what I'd said, and going after my material. But in a rare turn of events, it didn't end up getting censored. They took it down, examined it, asked me some questions about it. I made it obvious to them, apparently, that the joke wasn't making fun of minorities or whatever else it was, but about this whole attitude, this oppression Olympics, this one-downmanship culture that we seem to have found ourselves in. And they believe me, which is good because it's true. And it's been restored. So, yay, a rare victory.
That is good news. It's a good sign as far as drive-through is concerned, because we do have to keep an eye on precedents that get formed there. I was peripherally aware of what was going on there. I'm not really familiar with this game that this guy was promoting. I was aware of you criticizing him, and I'd seen some of the SJWs attacking you and claiming that you were, racist because you were trying to stop a black themed RPG, right? Or whatever you want to call it. I think the guy promoting his game describes it as Afrofuturism. Okay. Yeah.
Which is a cool aesthetic.
I don't know anything about the game, I'll say, but I'm pretty sure that your issue was not that you don't think there should be Afrofuturist RPGs out there. Is that right?
No, I thought he had a really cool concept and a really cool game. And it's not like Maximum Mike ever had to go, hey, everybody, I'm black. Check out my game because I'm black. And he never had to do that. The game speaks for itself. And I would think that is the way to sell something. Don't not give me attention because I'm a racial and sexual minority. I think they're non-binary or something as well. Yeah, that's not the way to sell things, to get, I don't know, pity bucks or whatever. Sell people on the fantastic art, because it is really good art they've got for this, and the setting ideas, which aren't as good. Honestly, it's a bit derivative. But get people excited on that basis. Don't guilt trip them into liking something you've done. It's just,
I like to outrage people into buying my products.
I just do that naturally with no effort. So
myself, I just make excellent OSR products, and then people buy them. I have never ever in my life promoted my games. You guys know that, right? I definitely do not go all over G+ and MeWe posting links to my games and telling people about them, right?
Well, the extent to which you guys go to promote yourselves makes me cringe slightly, but the way this guy was doing it, trying to get a congresswoman to promote his game for him, made me cringe into my own asshole.
If I could get AOC to say something about me,
it probably wouldn't be flattering.
I hope. Tentacles crossed. I would.
Yeah, because it wouldn't matter what they said; it would make you famous, right? So I totally understand the logic behind trying. I have to say, as a self-promoter, I will say of this guy that tried to do this, that that I'm not sure if he has them, but or I'm not sure what their pronoun is or what have you. But that takes some balls to do that, right? And I mean, I've got to say that it kind of was a worthy try. I think that the problem with that sort of thing is that it only really looks good if it actually works, right? So like if somehow Cortez had supported his promoted his game, I mean, that would have been worth gold for the guy, right? So I'm not going to blame him for that. I do think, though, that the whole element of promoting your game, not for what the game is, but because you're a minority or something like that. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, buy Lion and Dragon because I'm Latino, like that's the part that I think makes me cringe, right? That notion that we should be like involving our identity as part of the marketing of a game, right? Even if the game relates to that identity, that seems off somehow, right? Like, shouldn't you be talking about the game itself and celebrating what the game is about,
It rubs me the wrong way and annoys me in exactly the same way and for exactly the same reasons that Varg Vikernes trying to sell his games on his white supremacist ideas and his white identity pisses me off. I see no difference between the two.
It's like, imagine if I was saying, well, buy Dark Albion because it's it's an English game, right? And it promotes Englishness or something like the reaction to that would be immediate and obvious and probably deserved, right? If you were saying, if you sound like someone from the the British National Front or something like that, right? Then that's we all know that's a bad thing, right? So it's not any better thing to say, oh, buy my game because it's African themed, right? And it shows, African greatness or something like that, right? Like you want to describe what it's about and explain why it's awesome as a game. You don't want to say, buy it because you support this particular racial identity, right?
Yeah. I mean, however interesting and fantastical the ideas of the Nation of Islam are, putting them into a game and then promoting it on that basis would be a bit off, I think.
And you know what was funny about this? I did see one thing related to this, because I did see tweets that kept flying at me that people were retweeting and stuff. I didn't get involved in it anyway, and I didn't do a lot of my research, I'll admit this. But I did see this guy himself, the guy you're talking about, the one who made this game, he himself commented at one point something that I would have otherwise pointed out, which I was going to say, let's face it, most of the people are going to back this Kickstarter of his, and most of the ones that are going to buy his game and then probably proceed never to actually play it because they're buying the Kickstarter out of virtue signaling are white people, right? But he beat me to the punch. He did this post saying, guys, there's a lot of great white people out there, like the ones who are supporting my Kickstarter. I can't believe how many white guys are buying, supporting my Kickstarter. Good on you guys, right? So okay, I'm glad that he said that. I mean, I'm glad he admitted it, that this is not a game that's actually going to be like, there's always this false notion among the SJW crowd that if you make a game about, bisexual Latinos, that all of a sudden you're going to get a bunch of bisexual Latinos into the role-playing hobby, that that they wanted to play D&D for years, but they just didn't get into it because there wasn't an RPG game about bisexual Latinos, right? Like, that's not how it works. That's never how it works. And the people who are going to buy these games that are all about virtue signaling a particular identity are still just going to be mostly white people and mostly white males, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be the same SJW crowd, who we all know are majority middle-class white people, right? But at least
we woke up tomorrow and 80% of all black people were just like, yeah, fantasy role-playing game is awesome. Or D&D is great, and they just wanted to play and get into different role-playing aspects, and that was just part of this new culture of play. But yeah, I don't know how many black people to white people play games like D&D or other role-playing games, but it just doesn't seem like it's anything that most of them are into. Which is too bad. That's a shame. I think all people would enjoy role-playing if they gave it a chance, but it just happens to be this hobby that,
there is a legitimate way to reach out to non-white people to play D&D, which is to go to non-white places or non-white groups or non-white communities and say, come play D&D. That's all you need to do, right? Like, I live in a third world country that is Latino, right? And here, there's a huge role-playing community because there were a few people way back in the late 80s who had gone to study in the US and came back with some AD&D books. And then it kind of went on from there, right? And now there's for a tiny country, there's a disproportionate number of D&D or tabletop RPG gamers. But, they're not playing games about Gauchos on the Pampas. They're playing D&D. The two most popular games here are Dungeons & Dragons in one of its many iterations, and then the old first edition World of Darkness books, right? And then there's a number of other ones after that that are popular, which often aren't the usual ones but they're the ones that people find out about because someone brought them here. Like, for example, the most popular game I've written that is that is most played in Uruguay is Lords of Olympus, which is not my best-selling game, right? But it's huge here because some people, when I got some review copies or not author copies, I gave a few of them away. Some of those people started playing. People loved it, and then it like took off, right? And there's like this crazy Lords of Olympus fandom here, right? But what you don't see is anybody playing games, about like Latino heritage or Uruguayan history or stuff like that. And there have been a couple of games that actual Uruguayans have made, and the most popular of those is like an anime themed giant robot game, right? Like that's the most popular Uruguayan made game, right? And you see the same thing, for example, in Brazil. One of the most popular Brazilian RPGs. I don't know if there's any Brazilian RPG that's about like Brazilian culture or Brazilian history. You don't see ones about like the carnival or the samba or Brazilian candombe or something like that, right? You see their most popular RPG is this one that's like about like mecha versus kaiju battles. And then another one is like this hardcore high fantasy stuff that seems to me, I'm not sure, but I think it's like inspired by like Final Fantasy and stuff like that, right? Like they like the same things everybody else likes because we're all part of one culture, the Western culture, right? And it doesn't mean you can't have a Latino themed game or a Chinese themed game or an African themed game or an Indian themed game. I know someone who wrote an Indian themed RPG that I think was very good and did very well, right? It's called Arrows of Indra. You should check it out. But it means that if what you want to do is draw in gamers that are more diverse, all you have to do is you can't just sit around in your tiny little circle of middle class white college graduates and sell to each other and think you're making a difference. You want to make a difference, go to the freaking places where there are people of the diversity group you think you want to get, bring some D&D basic sets and get them playing. You don't even have to participate if you think it's beneath you, which many of these people I think do, because it's very clear that a lot of SJWs actually have nothing but contempt for racial minorities, right? They see them as property. So just drop off the books and they will get into it themselves, right? Like they're just like us, you guys. They're absolutely just like us.
So the budget is telling you to go to the ghetto with your D&D books, maybe around 11, midnight. Just Google like Martin Luther King Boulevard, wherever it is in your city. Go there. Your guy's bag.
I was thinking more schools and youth clubs, but
yeah, exactly. Community centers, stuff like that. Churches.
Did you guys ever see the Key and Peele? They did a couple like D&D sketches, and it was basically like one of them was these black like street, I don't know, thug, urban, gangbanger, that type, like sitting down. Unbeknownst to them, they didn't like know what D&D was, but they were sitting down for some reason playing D&D, and it's funny. Go see it, but it's like it's different. There's like a cultural divide there, which would be nice to bridge. So hopefully that happens. I live in Wisconsin, South Central Wisconsin, and there's not a lot of black people here, but. Maybe someday.
Not to conform to a racial stereotype, but D&D is big. It's huge in prisons where it's allowed to be played. So, and
in the military, which in the United States nowadays, one of the most diverse institutions, racially diverse institutions in the entire United States is the U.S. military, and role-playing is huge there.
Yeah, so donate some games to prisons, military units, things like that. Plenty of veterans are happy to receive something like that to keep them distracted. Should we move on to our last item?
One more thing, Benjer. I was going to say I haven't seen that comedy show, but there's in Brazil, D&D is hugely popular too, right? And there's this Brazilian YouTube channel that does like comedy sketch, and they did one quite a few years ago now that was basically a group of like Brazilian narco gangsters in the favela playing D&D, right? And like at first it's like this, they're talking it out in this like, it looks like a tense standoff between drug dealers, and you find out that they're role playing it in the game, right? And it was very funny. So apparently that's a theme that shows up in more than one culture.
Yeah, well, it's definitely culture shock. You get these nerdy white guys who are like, and then my elf casts magic missile into darkness, and meanwhile you get the other like, and then I tell my bitch to buy me a 40 oldie and pack of cool cigarettes and go down and I don't know, jack someone's car. I don't know. Sorry, that's probably coming off extremely racist.
The real privilege that the role-playing industry has to overcome for diversity purposes is not race, it's class. It's something that there have always been lower class gamers, but gaming itself, especially the game designers, especially the game influencers, all of the SJWs we know are middle class and up, right? And it's and that's why there's a racial gap in D&D, I think. It's because it started with a bunch of middle-class guys from Wisconsin. It moved on to a bunch of upper middle-class, SJWs from Seattle, right? And they woe and bemoan about the fact that they don't have a more diverse hobby. But it's because they don't want to be near anyone who isn't like them. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, Alpha Blue is as low class as it gets. So I'm doing my part.
Well done.
We've kind of touched on mob justice and censorship and things, and there's been a fairly prolonged campaign after everything came out about Zach Smith, which he's responded to. So if you want to get the other side of that, you can go and find that. But people have expanded that to going after people who are or were in his circles, such as Satine. So, Pundit, you know a bit more about this.
That's right. There's a guy by the name of Daryl Mott who has apparently been going around these last few days and on Twitter, on Satine Phoenix's Twitter feed, and repeatedly posting demands that she apologize for having been friends with Zach and for having, allegedly covered up his crimes over the years or something like that, which is not the case. I mean, Satine, like many other people, what her point of view is that she said that she didn't have any idea about many of the things that were happening there. She never personally, I believe she said she never personally experienced any kind of harassment from Zach. She had no reason to know. And of course, we know that when she did find out about this, she didn't stand, with that type of behavior. And so, she said, I'm going to quote something that she posted here in reaction to this guy's harassment of her, where she said, "I'm sorry he hurt so many people. I don't know why you feel I need to apologize. I didn't encourage him. I didn't participate. I'm no longer friends with Zach. I'm sorry you were hurt. He needs to apologize to everyone. I know my truth and apologize when I do wrong." I only disagree with one thing Satine Phoenix said there when she said, "I'm sorry you were hurt." Daryl Mott was never hurt by Zach Smith. Daryl Mott is an opportunistic piece of garbage who is now trying to go after anyone that he feels might not fit his SJW agenda, and he's feigning hurt on behalf of others as part of a witch hunt, right?
Yeah.
And so he's been causing quite a lot of this, and Satine's been fighting back, but from what I've heard, she's not going to be continuing at Wizards of the Coast, and Wizards didn't say that they fired her for this or something like that. But I'm guessing there's been a considerable number of SJWs who have been contacting Wizards trying to get rid of her. You remember that way back when we were kind of starting out, I think it was one of our earliest episodes, was around the time that Satine was hired by Wizards about a year ago. And we had been talking about this. We've been saying, look, I think that, she was praised by all the SJWs because, she's a woman of color, and, she's by all appearances, she looks like one of them, but we knew that, she'd worked with you, Grim. She'd worked with Zach. She was a strong advocate for free speech. She was kind of, I'd said back then, I think that they just don't realize who she is, and when they find out what she actually is, they're going to come after her. Well, it took a little longer than I thought it would, but I think that once again, the pundit was right.
Well, to be fair, we were all right, I think, because we all said similar things.
The same way, right? But I'm the one that brought it up.
It's
we know that she's definitely not going to be moving forward with Wizards of the Coast. I mean, did they come out with a press release, or did she say something?
She said something. I basically said it's a cool position and you should apply for it. So it was on a contract for a year. I am surprised that they wouldn't renew her contract and keep her on, because as far as I'm concerned, Pundit might have some reservations because of the whole concentration on the live streaming and so on. But as far as I'm concerned, she's done a fantastic job promoting the game and just being such a wonderful booster. I mean, part of her charm, if I could just finish, is that she is really enthusiastic and she always tries to see the best in people, which is why she's not quite as quick to condemn as maybe some of these people would like.
Yeah, I'll say absolutely she's done a great job. I might not like live streaming, but I mean, from a business perspective, she was great for them, right? Like, she's done everything right, like she's done exactly what she needs to do to sell D&D to people, and that's what she's there. That's what the job. I mean, if I had been hired for a job like that, I would also be promoting live streaming, right? And that sort of thing, because that's the corporate tactic that works, right? And she's been great. She's an ideal spokesfigure because, everybody will like her, right? People will either find her attractive or be attracted to what she says, or will want to be like her, or will see her as a model of someone that they would like to have at their table with them. Like, she satisfies pretty much every possible imaginable condition of what you would want for someone to be the front of your alleged community, right? I don't really agree that there is a D&D community, corporate community, but it's perfect for that job.
Is Wizards of the Coast so hard up for cash that they can only hire one extra person, and then so one person has to quit for them to hire someone else? I mean, can't they have multiple, I don't know, brand managers or ambassadors in the geek community or what have you? It just seems like a no-brainer.
Well, it would seem like a no-brainer for her to keep working there, and I think that the reason why she's not is because of this. I don't think there could be any other reason, but of course they're not going to come out and say that. They're not going to do it, and they're probably going to make sure that she doesn't do it in some way, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't like to speculate too much, but it's probably played something of a role. I'm sure she'll be fine. She's got plenty of other stuff she can do. She
can come work for me in Alpha Blue. Or Dallas Publishing. Yeah. Speaking of which, I got to go. I have to spend time with my wonderful wife, not my parole officer.
All right.
Same thing.
I got in trouble last time, so
anyway.
Great show, guys. See you next time. And
all right. Take care, Venture. We'll see you next time. Remember, everyone, if you want Venture to stay later, support us on Patreon, right? Send us some cash so that we can convince Mrs. Venger to let him stay up later and not, to stay up past his bedtime and have longer shows and have shows more often. So this is what you will get if you if you back us on the Patreon. You can find the link to our Patreon in the description of the video. Please do so in order to have more Venger Satanas.
Hail Trump.
All right. All right, so
was there anything else extra you thought of to talk about, or should we see if there's any more comments there?
Well, looking through the video comments here, we've had some people saying, I blame social media for mob totalitarianism in today's society. Well, yeah, I think it's a mutual relationship. I think that the two things encourage each other. Dracopol says, in reference to what you were talking about, Canadian weird porn laws, he said a Canadian comic book shop was shut down for selling issues of Yummy Fur. That doesn't sound like something that I would want to purchase, but I'm always, I'm such a free speech advocate, but I always kind of feel a little bit unsure when it comes to furries, right? Like if there's one thing that would bring out the censor in me, but no, we've got to allow even the furries have a right to free speech. So he says anthropomorphic animals were in bed together on a Sunday morning, and that was deemed bestiality. Okay, well, that is a stupid reason to ban a book, isn't it?
Isn't there a famous book from Canada about some woman having an affair with a bear or something?
Yes, it's a 70s. I don't know if it's famous. The internet made it famous, right? It's like a weird 70s novel, right, about a woman who falls in love with a bear. But as a Canadian, I have to say, I had never ever heard of it until like a couple of years ago when it became a meme, right? So let's see what else there is here. Aaron RPA says, "Is Swordsfall the name of this game that the guy was promoting to AOC? Is that right?"
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows it's Rocks Fall. Everyone dies, not Swords Fall. But yeah.
Aaron RPA was saying, "I was backing Swordsfall until the creators started that bullshit. I thought the setting sounded fun and interesting."
Yeah, I mean that's why it was on my radar. I was kind of vaguely interested in it. I just found this these actions so distasteful. I think he's been being coached by the Zweihander guy who never met a sales tactic he didn't like. So,
yeah, but I sometimes question a lot of those, not so much the sales tactics as some of the things he does to create the illusion of success. But anyway, Judd Goswick says, "We need to get India role playing." Well, it would be great if India started role playing. I can tell you how what would not be the way to do that would be to like try to sell Arrows of Indra there. Like people, when I came out with Arrows of Indra, people said, "Well, are you going to try to promote this game in India?" And I said, "No. I mean, if you want to promote something in India, promote D&D in India. That's a better way to go, right?" Like again, the Indianness of it is not going to get people playing. You might get a few well, not even in my case, because Arrows of Indra does not really strictly conform to like Hindu orthodoxy. But I mean, if it was a strictly Hindu orthodox game about the Indian epics, you might get some like Hindu nationalists that would buy it because of that. But that doesn't mean that they'll play it. It's the same problem you get with virtue signalers of any.
Yeah, they'd probably see it as blasphemy. So
yeah, more likely. Mm.
A sold copy is a sold copy, but you don't want it to be kindling, really.
Yeah, exactly. After that, we've got as someone who did time, I can confirm that D&D and Vampire are both popular in the joint. Okay. Judd Goswick says, "I know a guy who played Warhammer in Russian to practice the language while he was in the Navy. And he had cool prop scrolls in Cyrillic texts." Okay, that sounds interesting. SR2 Joker says, "Pundit, one thing I'm interested in is asking you what you think about that awkward exchange on your campaign video from Condor DM." Well, I'm sorry, I barely remember it for starters. I know, I think you're referring to a recent video where there was some guy that said something and then I responded. But I mean, that happens to be so often that for them, it's a life-changing experience. For me, that's Tuesday, right? Like they're going to define themselves forever by their pundit hate because of what I did to them. And I literally barely remember it now. I kind of remember the reference. So I'll say this, Joker, I'll have to check back, and maybe you can ask me about it the next time I do a live stream on my channel, which you should all go and subscribe to if you haven't yet, the RPG Pundit channel.
And encourage people to subscribe here.
Sorry?
And encourage people to subscribe here. We're about halfway to the 1,000 we need for monetization. So.
Yeah, please. I always tell people to come subscribe here on my channel, and it seems surprising to me that a proportion of them don't. Because I mean, it's very similar in many ways, the videos I do. And yet, I've just hit the 900 subscriber mark on my channel, which means that even if everybody who subscribed to Inappropriate Characters did so also being subscribed to my channel, that would be less than half of my subscribers, right? But, well, I guess maybe it's a different format because this is a longer show. My videos are usually 10 or 20 minutes, closer to 20. And this is like a 1 hour show. So maybe that's the difference. But, yeah. Well, definitely subscribe to Inappropriate Characters if this is the first time you've been on here. And I'm going to keep saying that on my channel, too.
We should probably wrap up then, if there's nothing else.
Let me check to see just if there's any other comments that are really worth discussing. John Simon says, think about TSR as a gaming company and Wizards of the Coast as a satanic conspiracy. Okay. A guy with a name that's a bunch of letters and characters says, I buy indie stuff pretty regularly. I've bought books from each of the guys in the stream. I probably like 5 of Grimm's. You win. 2 of Puppet and 1 Avengers. I'm happy enough that I didn't come in last.
Avengers an acquired taste.
Yeah, I think so. He's got a very loyal fandom. The guy can put out a Kickstarter and will get it funded by the people that really like Alpha Blue. So I'm not saying that, he's obviously doing something right in terms of getting his niche. Okay, so I guess that's it for today. I want to thank everyone who came on and watched us and added to the comments. And again, support us, subscribe to our channel, share this video anywhere you want to help promote our channel, and get us to that 1,000 subscriber mark, and support us on Patreon if you want us to do more videos more often and maybe get Venger to be allowed to stay up another 15 minutes.
Yeah. Maybe Shadow Demon will let him stay longer next time. If you want to support me quickly, the best place to do that these days is post-mort.com, which is my own site. So I get more money when you buy stuff there.
As for me, you can check it out anywhere that I sell stuff, on DTRPG, on Dark Albion you can get on Lulu. This is the alternate hardcover of Dark Albion, which you can only get on Lulu. Right now, the Dark Albion hardcover on Lulu is on sale for $29.24, which for a 250 more or less page hardcover is a pretty good price. 275 page long, sorry. So check that out if you haven't bought the game yet, and check out my Pundit Presents series that I am releasing on a regular basis every week with a new episode. The current issue of RPG Pundit Presents is an adventure called The Kimry Davy, which is a medieval authentic adventure that has a combination of role-playing and classic romance and action, that is all based on one of the most famous folk songs of the English canon. So be sure to check that out. It's a very special adventure module. And I guess that's it. Enough shilling.
We'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.
Currently smoking Near Up Hawkbill with the Image Virginia.
All right. See you all next time, everyone. Bye-bye.